Hello and welcome. You are listening to an episode of the Sales Chat Show. To stream or download a host of further free episodes that will power your sales success, please visit saleschatshow.com. We really hope that you enjoy and benefit from this episode. So, hello folks, and welcome to another episode of the Sales Chat Show, saleschatshow.com, driving your sales forward in the virtual Sales Chat Show studio, still being recorded under the lockdown regulation situations in the United Kingdom. So Phil, Graham and I are meeting by the miracles of modern technology to bring this episode to you. And this episode is entitled, Has COVID Meant We Have Seen the End of the Field Sales Force? Ooh, a bit dramatic, that one. Mr. Jones, you are going to kick us off with a story you have been told from a contact of yours.
Yeah, this came from one of my neighbours, actually, who'd been talking to a friend of his who worked for a brewery. And the brewery had been holding lots of Zoom meetings with its pub landlords and other customers. And they realised that they were taking orders for when the pubs reopened perfectly happily over the internet, their online ordering system. And they were questioning, why do we need a sales force? Because we've managed to get everything working okay using Zoom. And in fact, the landlords were reporting that they felt more connected to the brewery because they were talking to people from head office and not somebody, a sales representative of head office. So they felt more connected to the company and they could order everything directly. So it made the company think, why do we need a sales force? Now, obviously, there are probably lots of reasons why they need a sales force, but it just struck me that they won't be the only kind of company that's actually questioning that now, because they've been able to do things using technology that they hadn't been trying before the COVID crisis happened. So I'm sure that, right around the world, there are organizations questioning whether or not they need a sales force, or is there something better they can do with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think having worked in that industry previously, quite some time ago, the classic model was, a salesperson would do 8 calls a day onto the retail outlets and, selling in the products and liaising with the customers, obviously covering quite a few miles or kilometers a day. Sometimes as well, literally in the old days, physically taking the orders from the customer. And then you have a strange situation where sometimes you'd have a telephone sales function and a field sales function, sort of sometimes both sort of doing the same job. So I think it does, I wouldn't panic if you're in a field sales position. I don't think we're saying, the end of the days has come. But certainly, for me, it's about how do you get the maximum value out of your field-based salespeople. So, for example, what can you do to take away low-value activity that could be very quickly and efficiently done via things like Zoom and online ordering to free up time to focus on far more value-adding, advising the customer, talking about growing the business, consulting with them, helping to do those. Because there are some things that you just cannot do online. You can't demonstrate technical products online. If you're in the medical field, you can't demonstrate medical technology, how an endoscope, for example, functions particularly well, I don't believe, over things like remote technology. But what could you take away? What has COVID taught you about what lower grade, very important, by the way, activity, but just lower value, more transactional, that we could strip away to maximize the value and also probably maximize the motivation of your field sales force to do more high value, high worth activity rather than low value, because they
I think you're right. If you think about that phrase that's often used in sales, quote, it's just a routine call, unquote. I think probably what has happened is that the the routine call has bitten the dust. And as you say, Simon, it's now about being much more targeted and specific around added value items, isn't it?
Yeah, and I could see potentially a hybrid model where you would reduce the frequency of callage, you would move those routine things and do those more efficiently, and then maybe you would have a field sales force that was located remotely at home some of the time, or even in the office potentially, but I think more likely the way things are going remotely at home, and then traveling out to meet customers as and when there was a valuable need to do so. Because I think the other shift is everybody has been exposed to using video conferencing platforms like Zoom and Microsoft Teams, etc. And I think customers have realized you can achieve a lot of things with suppliers without having to have the supplier coming into the office and
But
occupying your time for an hour or two.
one thing that I'd just like to add, though, is that we shouldn't forget that all companies have been in the same boat in the last 4 months, i.e., they have not been allowed by law to go and visit many of their customers. But in the future, if in any industry sector the majority stay on Zoom-based technology, but somebody else decides to go back to face-to-face representation, maybe in a way that gives them an advantage because they're the only ones that are actually building that human face-to-face rapport. And we know from our own lives, don't we, with friends and family, that there is something very unique about that face-to-face relationship and contact as opposed to what we're doing now, looking at three faces on a screen.
But what they'll be doing in that face-to-face will be more interesting because there's nothing more soul-destroying than getting a job as a field sales representative, and actually all you are is an order taker, and you just travel around doing miles, slogging around the countryside, going into, in this case, pubs, taking their order and walking out again and not actually doing anything really very interesting. Well, all of that can be automated and can be done online, and you can go and do a much more interesting thing in face-to-face conversations with people, maybe expanding the kind of work they do, the range they take, different kinds of, events you can help them with and special things, and you can be more creative and it will make your job more interesting. So actually, far from this being an opportunity for businesses to get rid of sales forces, I think it's actually an opportunity for people in boring sales jobs to end up with a much more interesting sales job.
Yeah.
I think it's about rethinking use of your field sales force, not necessarily scrapping it. That's definitely, and I think also to Phil's point, there has been a bit of camaraderie spirit. We're all in this together, and whatever you do to keep the ship running, you're doing a wonderful job. That's going to fade as life comes back to, people have more freedom and we come out the other side. Some things are definitely going to have changed probably forever. But it doesn't mean that, what's been happening in the last 4 or 5 months is necessarily how things are going to be going forward. So I think it's probably having a short, medium and long-term time horizon. But again, ask your customers, which is, we'll back to our, here we go again, the sales chat show team climb back onto their favorite soapbox. Have a conversation with your customer. How did they find it? What do they like? What do they think of it? What needs were met? What weren't? How would they like to be looked after? How often would they like to see your salesperson? Because often we call on them irrespective of when they would like it. That's certainly when I was some time ago. But it was, we would be calling on you once a week or once a fortnight or once a month, whether you wanted to see us or not. Which was.
And then you get the client saying to you, "Weren't you here yesterday?" And you go, "No, that was a week ago." And they go, "Oh, it seems like yesterday," and they've got nothing else to say to you. Because there's, they've dealt with everything, they've done their order, there's nothing else to say, but you've, as a salesperson, have ticked the box saying, "I visited that customer again."
Yeah. And
what's the point?
The reason why I'm here today is because it's Tuesday.
And that is not far off. So you're a large customer, therefore I will call on you a lot. And I think particularly in 2020 as we move forward, buyers don't have as much time as they. Don't forget as well, they don't want to see you until they've done their research anyway. In B2B, a lot of the time, they're going to be, the way they buy has changed. The old role of the field sales force, pre the information being available on the internet, was to tell customers about products they wouldn't hear about any other way. Whereas that's not the case. There's so many different ways to connect with customers now that I think it's a good opportunity to have a think, have a conversation with your customers, have a conversation with your field sales force, have a conversation about what they think. Because of course, think about the retention, like Graham said, opportunity to move to a more interesting, enjoyable job where you feel you can make the maximum contribution.
There's a lovely Charles Darwin quote, isn't there? I think he made some comment that the species that survive are not necessarily the largest or the strongest, but those that are most responsive to a changing environment. And I guess what we're talking about here is exactly that, isn't there? There's nothing to be fearful about if you are a field sales director listening to this, providing you are responsive to the change that's going on in the world and make some effort to work with it rather than ignore it.
I mean, today, you have to adapt to survive.
Yeah, and I, for example, today I've been working with a client in the IT industry, and they will often have the larger accounts, like global accounts. They'll have an independent inside salesperson, and they have an external. The external is seen as being more senior, and they go and visit the customer on site, and the internal one deals with other things. I'd say there's I'm not saying that's not a good model. I'm just saying I could have a rethink. You can have a hybrid model that might better suit your sales team. You might better suit your customers, or you just have a rethink, just have a flex, have a rethink. How does your customer like to buy? How do they need to be looked after? Of course, how do you want to interact with them? Because, you do want to be driving your sales forward with the customer. And of course, your agenda is important to your organization. But I think it's a good opportunity to have a rethink. If you were going to start with a blank sheet of paper, you probably wouldn't start with what you've got now.
No, but also from a sales director's point of view, you've got the opportunity now to look at your sales force, and you'll find people on there who are really good with Zoom technology and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And so consequently, they'd be better used to maybe run meetings with half a dozen customers at the same time and talk about the new products that are coming out, for example. And that they'd be much better off doing that. So there'll be new jobs that come out of this, that your existing sales force would be, somebody in it would be really good at those kind of new roles that are going to arrive.
I'm guessing that particularly with things like people who are working internationally selling, more scrutiny is going to be given to, okay, this is going to take 3 days round trip to do this. Is this a really valuable meeting we're going to be going to? And can we justify this, for example, from a health and safety, and also from a cost point of view, and from an environmental point of view? Can we achieve this in another way? Or if we are going to be going, let's absolutely make sure we squeeze every ounce of value out of the face-to-face interaction, rather than just turning up because it's a Tuesday or we haven't seen you. We haven't seen you in a while. So definitely an opportunity to. I'm sure many of our listeners will have had some amazing meetings and have made some great sales in a virtual way, potentially building relationship with customers they've never met physically. And you've managed to achieve some amazing things. There are some shortcomings and there are some limitations, but I think the situation will have taught a lot of us a lot of things about maybe a different way to. And also for employers to think about a different way to have your employees. I saw one of the big Japanese IT companies has announced that several thousand of their team will not be coming back to the office, and they're going to equip them all to work remotely. So you're going to see more buyers working remotely. Well, you're not going to go and visit them at home, are you? I don't think.
No, I was talking to some businesses the other day, and three businesses in a row. One said they have no intention of going back to the office, so they're going to get rid of their office. Another one who said that 3/4 of their staff don't want to return to the office, so they're going to let them work at home. And the other one who said, well, they've polled their staff and only one person wants to return to the office. And okay, these were all reasonably small businesses employing about 30 to 40 people, but each of them is thinking about, one of them's thinking about, well, maybe all we need to do is rent a small office that people can just pop into if they need a location, but that's the time they work from home. One is scrapping their office entirely, and the other one is just slimming down its office for the few people who want to go to work. So we're going to find lots of businesses are going to have lots of people working from home. So a lot of the sales force already do that. They're already based at home and maybe go into the office once a week or once a month. But we're going to find maybe some of those are going to be not needed to go into the office at all, because the reports they deliver, they're going to deliver via online technology.
I think also, I've seen some incredible examples of creativity coming out, which has often originated from within the sales force during this situation. They found clever ways to look at doing things differently and listen to your sales team. I was working with a large telecoms, and they're folks in Australia. And in Australia, the lockdown had been lifted, and you could meet people from outside your household. So perfectly okay to meet strangers, but it had to be in a public place.
Yeah.
So they arranged to go for walks with their key customers. Just a stroke of genius. Perfectly legal, perfectly safe. They kept 2 meters apart, and they took their customers for a walk round the local park and chatted about business. Genius.
So all those salespeople who learned to play golf were doing the right thing all along.
Oh no, I forgot. I thought that. Yeah, well, I don't play golf, so I've always been very skeptical. I just thought it sounded like an excuse to play golf. I will now be on the blacklist of all the sales chat show folks listening in who play golf. But I always just thought that was a proper excuse. Pretend you're having a conversation with a customer when in fact you were just playing golf. But,
it's the right thing to do after all.
I've only played golf once, dear listeners, and I got a hole in one the first time I played golf, so I decided I had no more to learn. It was I just hit the little ball, it went down the gully, through the windmill, over the mini bridge,
it was on the crazy golf.
On the crazy golf, yeah. So perhaps not Tiger Woods. So
I have seen somebody do an entire course in one, but that's another story.
Yes. Any closing thoughts, Mr. Jones, Mr. Jessen?
Yes, I've got one. A couple of years ago, we recorded an episode, which is probably lurking in our vaults somewhere. But it was along the lines of you only have to sell once a year.
Yes.
And we were talking to our lovely audience about timing the call around the customer's business year start, and via a very simple process of looking at where the customer is now, where the customer's going in the future, how they're going to get there, and how we can add value along that journey. A huge amount of identifying the need can be done in that one meeting. Thereafter, you're really sort of servicing it, and the occasional upsell or cross-sell maybe. But maybe it's worth people just revisiting the theory behind that, and also the timing of it, because in order to really maximize that, you've got to be at the party when the customer's spotlight goes on everything to do with budgets, targets, forecasts, and what have you. So the question to leave our listeners with is, do you actually know the business year-end stroke start of your customers? If not, maybe now's the time to do some research on that and to draw up a little chart somewhere so that you are in the right place, technology-wise. You're in the right place at the right time, resonating with the natural rhythms that are going on at the customer's end.
And I think while you're on the subject of plugging episodes, one we recorded recently with the 5 questions you need to ask your customer right now, Phil, which is about always led by you, about understanding any changes in customers' priorities that have occurred over recent months, which I think would be a perfect thing to listen to, as well as the, if you get it right, you've only got to sell once a year. Mr. Jones, any closing thoughts?
I would just say that whilst you're talking of past episodes, remember, of course, if you are changing the dynamics of your field sales force, you probably can't set them targets anymore. And so it'd be good to listen to the episode telling
Why
you
you
that
should
sales
scrap
targets are a
sales
waste
targets.
of time.
To the regular listeners of the Sales Chat Show, you know that Professor Jones can't resist getting in that. And if you've not heard that episode, it's where we have a right argument about whether you should have sales targets. I think Graham's sort of won, but Phil and I refuse to accept defeat.
Just edit him out, Simon, for goodness.
Yeah, I will do when I do the edit for this episode. But folks, we have to cut this episode now because Mr. Graham Jones is a judge for the Professional Speaking Association in the UK, the Speaker Factor competition, which is being run virtually this year. So Graham has got to go and do his very important judging activity.
A virtual judge.
A virtual speaking judge, no less, to add to his
I hope the majority will be found not guilty.
Yep.
So thank you very much for listening to an episode of the Sales Chat Show. Phil Jesson, Graham Jones, and Simon Hazeldine. 160, I think, episodes now at saleschatshow.com in the back catalogue, or as Phil described it, locked in the vault. They're not locked, they're publicly available to you all from wherever you get your podcast. So thank you very much for listening, folks. Please stay safe, and good luck and good selling. You have been listening to an episode of the Sales Chat Show. To stream or download a host of further free episodes that will power your sales success, please visit saleschatshow.com. Thank you very much for listening to this episode, and from everyone here at the Sales Chat Show, we'd like to wish you good luck and good selling.